All right, I'm about to go live.
What camera? Jake's?
Yep.
It's the only one we have.
All right, we're good to go.
Now?
Yep.
Hi, folks. Welcome. I have no idea what number this is, but anyway, we are about to start class number 24. Guys will start showing up tomorrow. We'll finish this Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern?
No, 7.
7 o'clock Eastern. So tonight's a big giveaway, thanks to Santa Claus, who has graciously donated the $2,000, but then my friend Paul in Ontario called us an hour ago and said, Rob, why don't you add $1,000 to that? So tonight we're giving away $3,000 in prizes that you can redeem in our shop. You can buy anything you want. So we're giving away 2 100s, 2 200s, 2 300s, 2 400s, and 2 $500 prizes. We'll do the at every 10-minute increment. So what do they have to do to register, Rick?
They register the same way as they always do. I've posted the link. It's the pinned chat message, so they just have to
And
register.
what did we decide? You can only win one of the 100, 200, 300, 400 prizes, but anybody can win the $500 prizes even if you've already won one of the previous ones. So you could get really lucky. All right, we're doing. What's the topic tonight? Is Ask Me Anything.
Yes.
Okay, I got some things to do, some notes. Oh, by the way, if you're a combat wounded vet that's on tonight, that's been to one of our classes, if you're one of our scholarship vets, just in the message section, do Chris, at Chris, and your name and the class that you were in. We'd love to give you a shout out. And that's Chris Davenport that's here. Chris is our resident, what are you, Chris? He's our resident engineer that is responsible for a lot of stuff I'm going to show you tonight. You got a question for it?
Sure. I didn't have Luther go through them, so it's going to be...
All right. Well, Luther's in transit. I think he just landed in Boston. He's driving to Bangor, Maine tonight, and then Jake's going down tomorrow with the van to pick the guys up, and they'll all drive back and be here tomorrow night for 7 o'clock for a barbecue. So everyone travel safe.
All right, Lee Zong in Sydney, Australia.
Lee?
Yep.
In Sydney?
Yep. Do you ever use shellac on any of your pieces, and what do you think of it as a finish?
No, I don't think I have ever used shellac in my life. So unfortunately, I can't even comment in any way, shape, or form. Now, I will tell you this. I tend to use one of two finishes on everything I do, and that allows me to get a little bit of expertise in those two finishes. If you broaden it too wide, chances are you're never going to get enough time in on any one of them to get really good. So I either spray lacquer or rub on tung oil type product. Next, Frick.
Next one comes from John Ackers in Kennewick, Washington.
Hey, John.
Could you quickly explain the numbers on top of the Sean shim again?
Yes. Yep. I can do that. Jake, you want to grab the urn? Where's the Sean shim? I never know where mine is because it's in one of, there it is, in one of three tool cabinets. Can somebody go find my my regular Sean shim? And Jake, you're going to have to come in close on this. So, Sean McDermott, who is a U.S. Army wounded vet, in our class in 2017. 17?
Yeah.
And we were teaching dovetails. And we used to offset the tailboard with a pin board using your marking gauge. So you would measure the saw kerf of your marking gauge. I already know this. You'd measure it with your marking gauge by setting it down on top of it and adjusting it. And then what you would do is you would hold this on the side in order to line up or offset your tailboard. And then you had to hold it down here. This one was easy, but this one you were trying to balance it on the end of the cutter. A little awkward. So Sean came up with this idea of using a little block of wood. So we took it from that and expanded on it. And Paul in Ontario makes these for us. So the bottom section is larger than the top section. On this side, now this is for the little tiny saw. which is our 3/4 saw. That's the crosscut version. That's the Dovetail. So this saw has a 15 thou saw plate with 2 thou on either side. So your kerf is 19 thou. So if you're working with joining two pieces of maple together, the 19 is the offset. I would use that offset for under those circumstances. So with the offset being, with this thing being 19 thou thinner than down here, I would hold it this way in order to move my tailboard to my right, and then I would flip it over like that in order to move my tailboard to my left. Now, if you're doing something like pine drawer sides on walnut drawer fronts, you can tighten it up a little bit, meaning you can tighten the joint up a little bit because the pine will compress. So in that case, you can move it over to the 20. Now what that's going to do, it's going to move the saw kerf over an extra 1 thou. Moving the saw kerf over 1 thou means you're going to make your your half pin 1 thou bigger. You're going to make your interior pins a total of 2 thou bigger. And if you have other saws, then you can go up to 21. If you need to adjust it, if it's a little bit too tight, then you can drop it down to 18. 18 means you're not going to move it over as much, so you're actually going to take off a little bit of the pin. So it gives you that flexibility. On the regular size Sean shim, we go from 23 to 20.
7.
We go to 27?
No, sorry, 26.
23, 24, 25, and 26. And that will also allow for other people's saws that don't quite as fine as ours, meaning the saw kerf is a little bit bigger. So that's what the numbers are for. And every time you sharpen your saw, you're going to reduce the set ever so slightly because your teeth are sticking out like this. And as you file them to sharpen them, it drops in height. Well, if it drops in height, the maximum set is up here where the highest points are. Drop that down a little bit, it's going to be a little bit narrower. And you may be able to sharpen 3 times before you got to go in and readjust your set. Hope that helps. Next, Frick.
Patrick Reiger in the chat.
Hey, it's 10 after.
I have 9 after.
Stop. Well, hold Patrick's thought. So let's give away our first. How many people do we have on?
Over 400.
Okay, so we're going to draw for 2 $100 prizes. Is Gina on recording this?
Yep.
Okay, Gina.
Okay, let's make these quick.
Okay, yeah, we're going to do it quicker, else we'll spend a lot of time doing it. So here are 2 $100 prizes. That's US dollars. Redeemable at RobCosman.com.
Okay, just 1 second. We're using a new wheel of names here. Let's see if this works. Okay. Now we have so many names you can't actually see them on the wheel, but it will tell us who won after I spin it. So here we go. Our first winner, this is for $100.
Yeah.
And the winner is...
If you don't hurry up, we're going to be doing the second one.
Oh, shoot, it's not coming up. Jeff Kernohan.
Where's Jeff from?
I have to look it up.
All right. Congratulations, Jeff. Next one.
I'm going to fix this before we do it next time. The next one is...
Remember, you can only win the smaller prizes. You only win one of the smaller prizes. Correct?
Brian Castiglione.
Hey, Brian. Congratulations. I recognize that name. All right. Before we do the next... Oh, no, you started. Read the question, please.
The question was from Patrick in chat. He says, when finishing a drawer case, do you glue the interior pieces, dividers, runners, etc., into the case first, then finish the glued assembly, or do you finish the interior pieces first?
Wow, I didn't grasp all that. Read that again, please.
I knew that was coming. When finishing a drawer case, do you glue the interior pieces into the case first, then finish the glued...
Whoa. If I'm building a case, do I glue the interior pieces in first?
He means like the dividers, runners, etc.
Yeah.
Do you do that into the case first, then finish the glued assembly, or do you finish the interior pieces first? It's the same question.
Oh, that's not coming through clear to me, but I'll give you what example I can think of. So when I made this, these pieces, these vertical dividers, so on these ones, all you have are little strips of wood that are glued into a dado. That's what the drawers run on. So, did I put them in first? I did, didn't I? I glued those onto these. Then I glued these pieces in between this piece and this piece. And then I glued, oh, this was a complicated one, really complicated. That's glued into there, that's glued into there, this is glued into here, that goes out beyond there. That was complicated. Try asking that question again, because I'm not quite getting it, and so I don't want to not answer it properly. So let me introduce you to something. So if you're tuning in for the first time, there are 4 people directly involved with the Purple Heart Project. And myself, Jake, Luther Sheely, retired Colonel Luther Sheely, and Super Dave Benson. Now, Super Dave came to our class in 2017, and he ended up becoming part of our program shortly thereafter. So Super Dave was responsible for 3 of each of the 6 classes each year, and Luther would do the other 3. Well, Super Dave passed away here just 2 months ago. Not quite.
Month and a half.
Month and a half ago. He died of an aortic aneurysm. It's quite a shock. He was only 41 years old. So this is the urn that we've made for him, for his ashes. His wife, Michelle, wanted it to be so that she could open it up and save other stuff in there. So the outside is made with fiddleback maple, which is her favorite wood. We went a little extra overboard, and we made the dovetails so that they protrude, and then they're chamfered all the way around. The lid is made up of veneered up in order to try to keep it flat. It has a wood hinge. So when you open the lid, inside, Super Dave's favorite wood was Vera wood. He received a Purple Heart for being combat injury. So the corners are Purple Heart. The bottom, I got to get the sawdust out, is leather. So she'll be able to keep all of his stuff in there as well as his ashes. So we'll be shipping this off to her. Now the only thing I have left, I'm going to put a little leather, 1 or 2, depending on what it needs, little lead stays. I have this round, 1/8-inch diameter round leather, and that'll just go there just to help that from being pushed back too far. But that's how many pin, Jake? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yep, 15-piece hinge, which was quite complicated. More complicated than I want to tell you. Anyway, so that is Super Dave's urn. And I can't help but saying he's been involved with his sense of humor in our building of this.
Twisted sense of humor.
Twisted sense of humor. Yeah, it has been a, I can't put that there, that pin's there.
Put it on that styrofoam right there behind you. Right
Chris,
behind
can you take that out of my hand? Right here, the microwave. Not microwave. A microwave. Microphone. Where am I going to put it?
On this piece of styrofoam right here. Right on the end of the bench. We're going to be doing another draw here in a minute. Frick, get us another question.
Question, Frick.
Terry Jensen in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Jerry or Terry?
Terry Jensen.
Terry Jensen.
What are you looking for when setting the frog on a plane?
What am I looking for when setting a frog in the plane? Well, that question lends me to think that he might not be fully versed on what the frog does. So let me show you. And I apologize if that's not the question. Remove the lever cap. Remove the blade and chip breaker. So this is the frog. The frog's primary function is to hold the blade at a fixed angle, which in this plane is 45 degrees. With the bedrock style frog, it's held in place with 2 pins. And on the back side, you access those pins. So this allows you to move the frog forward or back. Then you may ask the question, well, why would I want to move it forward or back? Well, the reason you want to move it forward, as you close that gap, now when the blade is in place, there's a gap between the trailing edge of the plane sole right here and the cutting edge of the blade. And as that gap decreases, because you've moved the frog forward, it puts pressure on the wood fiber directly ahead of the blade. And if the grain direction changes and it starts to lift the fiber up and tear, that is limited because the pressure of the sole of the plane right here is bearing down on the wood fiber directly ahead of the blade, preventing that from occurring. So you can plane against the grain without tearing it. Now, there's a limiting factor, and that is that you can't take a very heavy shaving with your throat closed down really tight. So in those circumstances, you want to pull the frog back in order to allow for a heavier cut. So when I have this in place, and the advantage of a bedrock style is when I have this in place, instead of having to take this apart, I reach in back, I loosen these two frog retaining screws, one on either side. Then I grab this one in the middle, and when I rotate that, it moves the entire apparatus either forward or back. When I get it where I want it, I lock each of the outside frog retaining screws, and I go to work. Now, that lends me an opportunity to tell you something about what we've recently come up with. Do we even have one, Jake, or you traded out everything? You have, haven't you?
Yeah.
So the old style had a slotted screw right here, which was constantly...
There's a 7 right here.
Constantly
Chris
getting
got
wrecked.
7.
So we put together a kit which includes 5 screws. This one, each one of these underneath that I just used, and the one that holds the blade to the chip breaker. And it's a hex drive. Thank you, Chris. Which means the screwdriver doesn't fall out. The nice thing about this is we also sell a ball hex. Ball end hex, which allows you to get in and make those adjustments without it being directly on center. This thing is called the adjustar. And instead of trying to turn that knob, which is so difficult to turn, you can turn that adjustar because it gives you such great leverage. It also opens it up so I can get at that center screw much easier than you could normally when you're having to reach around a big adjustar knob. Now, something else that you're going to want to know about. This is this week. Paul put these in the mail already, or they're in the mail Monday? Tuesday. So sometime next week, you'll be able to get this one. See that small diameter one? So that'll fit the Wood River number 3, the Wood River number 4, Lee Nielsen number 3 and 4, the Lee Nielsen number 10 1/4, whereas these ones are too large a diameter. So same principle, just and the Stanleys as well. So you'll be able to get them on your smaller planes. Stanley number 2, you just use that. There you go. I can't imagine too many of them floating around. Tell you some more about planes in a minute. We've got another draw to do. Now we're going to give away 2 $200 prizes. Frick, did you get it figured out?
Yep.
And you might want to use that. Oh, never mind. Draw it. Go ahead.
The wheel is spin. It takes about 10 seconds.
For the wheel to spin?
Yep.
Couldn't we cut that down a little?
No. Lynn Butler is the first winner.
Liam, $200 prize.
Lynn.
Congratulations.
Lynn.
Len?
Lynn, L-Y-N.
Lynn. Oh, Lynn Butler. Well, that could be male or female.
And the next one is going to... the winner is Tim Sexton.
Hey, Tim. Congratulations. I want to remind you, so I don't know how many of you have been following us for very long, but back in 2015, I got contacted out of the blue by this individual, and he said, Rob, I like what you're doing. I just sent you $1,500. If you want, just give away some prizes, some tools. And we did. And at first I thought, oh, this is strange. But he continued to send us funds. And he helped put several people into our workshop. And he was a huge help when it came time to helping Jesse Pratis, who was the first vet that actually inspired us to start the Purple Heart Project. And he called me up the other day and he said, or sent me an email and he said, Rob, he said, I'm sending you $2,000. If you want, let's give away some more tools. So it's a big thank you to Santa Claus. We nicknamed him Santa Claus a long time ago. He and his wife, Mrs. Claus, are extremely generous. They just, they get it. So Paul, who does a lot of it, Paul's done machining for us and design. In fact, I should show you some of the stuff. So Paul, I can give Paul direct credit for our mortise and gauge. As I look along here, what else am I going to be able to point out? He also was involved in the adjustar. He does the Sean shims. The wood hinge drill kit, which is probably one of our better selling items. Paul, actually, I had this was my idea. This is what the original one looked like, and then Paul put this idea together, where it would come in a kit form, and you would be able to interchange the drill holder, so that if you wanted to do a 1/2 inch or a 3/8 inch hinge, you could just put a 3/8 holder onto there, and now you could drill in the center of that. Or this one has an 1/8 inch drill holder, so that you can do a 3/4 hinge, which you'd do on a piece of furniture. Also the 1/2 inch and the 1/4. Smart man, I call him a genius. Good golfer too. So Paul called up today and says, why don't you throw another $1,000 in there? So we did. Thank you, Paul. Next question, Frick.
This one's from Jeff in Newfoundland.
Hey, Jeff.
He's wondering if you like to work with wood at a specific humidity, and also how do you season your wood?
Yeah. We try to keep, we keep our environment in here through, we have a, what do they call that? Split pump? Heat pump. So the heat pump acts as a dehumidifier as well, so it keeps the humidity pretty consistent. I don't like damp, humid. Bugs like it. Wood doesn't. Makes me sticky. So I much prefer a dry environment. If you're talking about seasons, wintertime is always the best because your wood is at the driest. Summertime, everything's sticky. But like I said, we control the environment. So it's not like the old time shops where humidity would fluctuate dramatically from season to season. Ours doesn't move very much at all. What else did he say? How do we season our wood?
Yep.
Well, we buy kiln dried wood. I mean, I do buy some air dried when I get a chance. If you've never worked air dried walnut, you really don't know what walnut looks like because it is so much more vibrant than what we buy that's been kiln dried. When they kiln dry walnut, they steam it, and it bleeds some of the dark heartwood into the sapwood, which increases the yield because you don't have as much white sapwood, but it dulls the color. Air dried walnut, and it just works differently too. Some people may think you're crazy when you say that, but no, there's something about it. It's wonderful. But typically we buy kiln dried lumber because it's the most readily available, and we leave it in here. And like I said, everything in here this is a controlled environment, so that's that. I want to talk a little bit about saws.
Can you do that after the next game?
Why?
Because we got 5 minutes to the next game.
Oh, okay. Another question, Frick?
Adam in the chat says, I found and bought an old number 7 Stanley Bailey US hand plane. Is it worth it to restore it? And will the adjustar fit on it?
The adjustar will fit on it. Is it worth restoring? So the problem is that those old castings weren't stabilized. They were seasoned, but from what I understand, it takes 2 years for cast iron to season, and I know they didn't have 2 years worth of castings laying around. So very rarely you're going to find a number 7 in particular that's 22 inches long, that it's actually going to be flat. Trying to flat a 22-inch long plane in a regular home shop is going to be just shy of impossible. Is it worth sending out to a machine shop? No. That would never come in at under $400 or $500. Right, Chris? Somebody came to you with a 22-inch plane and said, I need you to flatten the sole.
Unless it was somebody that did it.
What do you make? You make like $700 or $800 an hour?
The fixturing to hold it is what would kill it.
Yeah. They'd have to put together a fixture to hold it. So no, the answer is, if the sole's not flat, I wouldn't even bother touching it. If it was your grandfather's or your father's and you want it for sentimental reasons, then knock yourself out. Do whatever you have to. But as a user, you can buy a user plane with a lot less hassle, heavier castings, thicker blade, all kinds of features. Even if it was an old bedrock, number 7 bedrock, I don't think I would bother restoring it. Next question, Frick. I keep watching the clock because I'll make sure we get our giveaways on.
Next question comes from Sparks38 in the chat. He says, what is the best way to fix a new plane blade that is extremely convex, or should I return it?
Well, so convex means it's rocking. Return it. Not worth it. You can't work with it, because if it's rolling like this, if you're setting it down and it doesn't lay flat, it rolls, then how are you ever going to flatten that back? Because every time you move, it's going to be moving in a different spot. You'll never get it accurate. If it were concave and it had 2 high sides, well, now it's nice and stable, and you can just work that using the ruler trick, and it'll be an arc when you finally get it, but you just have to keep doing it until the arc joins in the middle, and you're good to go. I would take concave any day. Convex, nope, return. That's defective. You can't do anything with it. All right, I just want to, I want to show you this real quick, because we've got a hard date now of 8 weeks, 6 weeks.
Mid-August.
Mid-August. I know I've been telling you different dates, but this one actually came in. So, if you watch me at all, you know that the shooting board is second only to my plane. And trying to use a shooting board with your bare hand, and I have relatively calloused hands because I do this all the time, but as convenient as this is, and just in case you don't know what a shooting board is for, if I want to square the end of that board, if I use my shooting board, what's that? Oh, I was playing around with this. Rule number 1, get your blade set parallel to the sole before you use your shooting board. First thing I would do, cut a little chamfer on that side, flip it over, couple of passes, and now I know it's square in this direction, square in that direction. Incredibly important. Now, where do you put your hand? Well, I always told people you just kind of shove this piece of meat into that triangular shaped area and hope for the best. So Jake came up with this design. Been working on it for
7 months, 8 months?
Oh, get out of here, even longer than that.
Why do you ask me that?
Well, why don't you tell the truth when I ask you?
You mean your truth?
Yeah, my truth. So it's a piece of, we made it out of, we started, the first prototype was out of JB Weld.
Steel
what it's called?
epoxy.
Steel epoxy. Now it's cast aluminum. It has a pin right there. You set that in place, and it is the best handle for shooting. I'm going to show you a little more, but I don't want to get off schedule. So now we're going to give away 2 $300 prizes. Frick, you ready?
Yes. Let's go. Spinning now.
We are just a sweepstakes. Back?
We're back.
You're back, Chris?
Yeah.
Do we have any vets yet?
Yeah.
Can we?
There's a mic right there. You got the mic?
There's no other mics hooked in, Jake.
Yeah, there is.
Where? Oh, you're using your old one. Okay, go ahead.
Speak, Chris, and see if they hear you.
Okay.
You hear him, Frick?
Jeff O'Connor.
Jeff O'Connor. Who's Jeff O'Connor?
Jeffy?
What class was he in? Jeff O'Connor. Down in Virginia Beach. Famous Jeff. I got all kinds of stuff of Jeff's behind me. Howdy, Jeff.
Walter Rowe.
Walter Rao. Canadian vet up in Ontario. Wally?
Philip Lawrence.
Phil Lawrence. Where is Phil Lawrence? I don't remember the state.
Phil Lawrence, mid, like Kansas.
Yeah? Remember Phil? Phil's on all the time. Howdy, Phil.
Tony Payne.
Tony. He's up. Remember Tony?
He's just here.
Big Tony. Down in Australia. Only took him a week to get home. Hey, Tony.
Michael Delvoye.
Michael down in, I always say he's in Florida, but he's not in Florida. Where's Michael?
No. He's in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin? Michael?
John Borden's own.
John Borden. Now, who would that be?
John's
John Borden. Do you know John Borden, Chris?
Yeah.
That would be Sid. He's from Sydney, Australia. Sydney, Nova Scotia. And John Borden, we call him Sid, works here. In fact, if you buy a wood hinge drill kit, it was probably assembled by Sid. Howdy, Sid.
Jesse Marler.
Jesse Millar. Jesse is down in Texas, working on a workbench made by none other than David Robinson and Jack Lane. Howdy, Jess.
And I believe he didn't tag me, but I believe it's Ferris Butler. Ferris lost his foot, but to a landmine, but you'd never know it. He operates very well. Great guy. Big proponent of helping other vets. Howdy, Ferris. Anyone else? That's it for now.
All right. So, Randy, where are you going?
Eating ribs.
Enjoy your ribs.
I think the people didn't see who won.
They didn't see who won?
There's a lot of comments who won.
I said it in the chat. Jeff Lavino won.
Jeff Lavino.
And
And
Well, the other one was posted, I thought. I can't remember who it was. I thought we froze in between the first.
well, you better find out and announce it. All right, let me tell you how this works. You're going to want one of these. Jake, is it going to come like this standard?
no,
The sleeve's not? Huh?
sleeve is extra.
Sleeve is extra. So if you want the rubber sleeve, that fits on there. I like the metal. So here's how you do it. There's a pin in there, and it's quite tight, intentionally. So there's two little set screws, nylon set screws right there. So you're going to put this where you want it. So you would decide, what feels comfortable. Hold that in place, and then you've got to take an 1/8 inch drill bit.
There's not one in there.
There isn't? Well, there you go.
There's one right there.
Where you're pointing. This? That's not 1/8.
To the right.
To the right?
Ah,
This one? No. Are these quarters? So you take an 1/8 inch drill bit, and there's a hole in there, and you're going to use that as your guide to drill a pilot hole into your plane. You only need to go about 3/16 of an inch deep. Now, if you're going, drill a hole in my plane, well, okay, you're a collector, maybe. If you're a user, you're going to appreciate how good this is. Then you take that away, and you go over to your drill press and use a 1/4 inch drill to finish your hole. You only need to go down about 3/16 of an inch. Then you're going to wind this down until you're projecting about that much.
all the way.
Yeah,
It's designed to go all the way.
yeah, it's tight. Well, all right, it's going to go that much.
You didn't even know.
Then you put that in place. And then you can use your little set screws to take out any little slop you may have. And that holds on there very nicely. You're putting downward force. Actually, you're pressing down like this on an angle. You're holding it like that. You're pushing down to hold this plumb. And you're also keeping it in tight like this while you're moving it forward and back. And it feels wonderful. So, $40, $39.95, and they'll be ready mid-August, possibly a little bit sooner.
No, not soon.
I said possibly.
Possibly a little later.
Well, okay, whatever.
Does it have a name yet?
Oh, yeah, we're working on a name. Did we get a name? Well, we haven't settled on a name yet.
We did.
We did?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, we already announced. Well, we already told the winner. It's the hand plane shooting grip.
The hand plane shooting grip?
Yes.
We're going to need a military acronym for that because that's way too much.
Well, you'll call it the shooting grip or the grip, but the official name is the hand plane shooting grip.
The what? The hand plane shooting grip. HPSG. HIPSIG. Come on, O'Connor, I need you to come up with a decent acronym for that. Now we had a vet. We didn't have a vet. We had a student in our class, last class, one before. His name is John. He was from Florida. He formerly worked for NASA, and look what he made for us. And I have one on here. And we are going to take this further. We're going to get these so that everybody that comes to the class will be able to have one.
And then we're going to get a, what is this called? Is it a scroll?
No.
Like Super Dave's on there.
Scroll's one just below the Canadian.
It's going to be one that'll go across the top or the bottom, and it'll have the date of your class. So everybody will have that nice little memento from the class. All right, we got 30 seconds before I have to give away another prize. It's a lot of work giving away prizes.
This one's a quick one. I got a quick one.
What?
I got a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
SLU94 in the chat says, in the process of building my first workbench, if you had only one vise on your bench, what would be your choice?
If I only had one vise, or could only put one vise?
Yep.
No, the Schoberg, the one we put right here. So when we designed this bench, we had a vise here and a vise there, face vise, tail vise. But the vices are expensive, and
Well, are you answering any vice? That's the one vice?
I don't know.
I don't know if he wants to know brand of vise or type of vise.
Or where?
You could only put one.
Well, then I'll answer it in both ways. The only vise I would buy is the Schoberg Elite Schoberg vise that we sell. It's the best, and the reason it's the best, we wouldn't sell it if it wasn't. Why would you sell something that wasn't as good as it could be? We'd go find the one that was better. It's a 15-minute. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it's a 15-minute install. Instead of tubes, all the other vices have tubes right here. And the problem is that it racks. That means when you tighten something up and you can only grab half of it, the vise twists like this, and that means this part's left flopping in the wind and this part's tight. And the harder you wind on that, the more that happens. So down underneath, there are 2 set screws. And they push against this tube, this rectangular tube, so it takes all the racking out of it. It operates nice and smooth, works extremely well, and because it's so robust, you can make your jaws quite big, so you have a fair bit of area out here that you can grab hold of. I put it in the tail vise position because you can cut dovetails here, which is what you would use it for up there, as well as use it for planing and holding things between your bench dogs. We have them on our site, Schoberg vise, easy to install, just as long as your bench is flat on the underside. All right, we're giving away 2 $400 prizes, right?
We have to redraw the one of the 3s
Why?
because it would get cut out and we froze, so it didn't actually work.
Didn't we announce somebody's name?
No. Well, yeah, but it froze and it wasn't supposed to, so we have to redraw it. We can't go back. So we're drawing 3.
All right, so the first one is a $300 prize. Go ahead.
We're back to our old picker, which works for us, hopefully.
Oh, you mean you switched?
Yeah, we were using a different one. Okay, so the winner of the $300 is Steve Morin in North Augusta, South Carolina.
Hey, Steve, congratulations. $400 prize.
$400 prize is going to Gary Rick in California.
Hey, Gary, $400.
And
Second $400 prize.
it's going to Robin Lochran in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Robin, good name. Congratulations. And thanks to Kim O'Connor for coming up with the idea on how to give away these prizes. She's my one of our mastermind partners.
I don't know if you saw it. Jack wanted to give us a quick shout out to.
Oh, yes. I can read that. So you all know who Jack Lane is. Jack runs the bench brigade. And we have, I don't know how many members, it's over 300. These are people who have volunteered to build a workbench for a wounded vet who comes to our program that is in need of a bench. And did he email it to me?
Texted.
He texted? I thought I had it right here, my fingertips. Anyway, so Jack coordinates all of this so that hopefully we can get a bench built by someone close enough they can actually deliver it directly to the vet receiving it. So I had it, but I cannot find it.
You want me to read it? I got it.
Please.
So he wants to give a shout out to Jamie Fagel's 28-year-old son, Kyle.
Jamie has, just a second before you go any further, Jamie has built how many benches?
Probably 5 or 6.
Yeah. He's a bench building machine with a heart to match.
So his son was helping an older lady change a tire on the side of the road. The tire rolled away, and he went after it, and he was hit by a car. So he was badly injured, but he is recovering. He's recuperating with Jamie, but Jamie says he won't be able to play hockey anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, we'll send Moose down to fill your spot. Can you do that? Double duty. Hope you get better, brother. Our prayers and thoughts are with you. Thank you for your generosity, Jamie. And Jack, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Now can I do it, what I was going to do? Were we answering a question, or I was just going to tell you about the saw?
I didn't read a question, no.
Okay. So, thanks to Chris, we have 2 saws that could be ready as soon as next week. The blades are up with Chris just now being engraved. I want to show you this. You haven't seen this one yet. This is the Crosscut, and it cuts beautifully. The saws measure 22 inches on the blade. Sorry for the noise. We designed the handle so that it would be comfortable for an adult male grip. Cuts laser straight because it only has 3/1000 of an inch set per side. That's the Crosscut. Have you seen the rip before? 3/1000 set per side. So we designed the saw for furniture grade, dry furniture grade woods, whereas most saws are designed or were built for construction, where you're using wet lumber that would close in on you, so you had to have a lot more set. The more set, the more those points, those teeth stick out, the coarser the cut. So you're going to be thrilled with this. I think I've shown it before. I'm going to show it again. The rips as straight as a table saw. Whether you have any experience with it or not, now I'm going to stop partway through, and you can look and see how straight the cut is. Now that's in a piece of pine. If somebody insists, I'll grab a piece of maple and show you the same thing. Question, Frick? We've got 5 minutes before we have to do another draw.
All right, this question is from Hollywood Dave in the chat.
Hollywood Dave.
Hollywood Dave. He says, I have a basic bench plane that I use. I'd like to start using more hand tools. If I were to add another quality plane, which one would you recommend buying?
My second, what did he say he has?
He just has a basic bench plane.
I'm not sure what a basic bench plane is, Dave, but I'll tell you what my favorite is, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. How's that? So a shooting board, my shooting board, it gets used every time I'm using my plane. The shooting board is probably used once for every 3 times I use my plane. And what you want on a shooting board plane is weight, and you want length. You want length from the blade to the end of the board. The reason is, if you're shooting something, particularly something hard, it's nice to be able to get a bit of a run at it. Well, I can't stop. Bubba, bring him closer to the glass. This is Frick's 5th son. His name is
Royce.
Royce.
Roll.
Yeah, rolls. He weighs 21 pounds. He's 4 months old. And little Moosey, who's a year and a half, weighs 23 pounds. So that gives you some idea how big this monster is. So, as I was saying, if you're going to be using your shooting board and you've got a piece of hardwood, it would be nice to start back here so that you've got lots of momentum to carry you through the cut. The problem is you can't line it up perfectly. You end up hitting the end like that, or you're going to miss and close in, and now you're not cutting the full length. So you have to be engaged with the end of the board and the end of the plane before you go forward with your cut. So it's a lot easier to do that if you've got a little bit of length in here. So a 4.5 is very short in comparison. So it's kind of awkward, and it doesn't have the same weight. Now, why do I like that? Well, because this is also a very comfortable plane to use general purpose. I call it a super, actually David Charlesworth used to call it the super smoother, and I would agree wholeheartedly. Great plane. So that's my number one. If you don't have that, I don't care what other plane you have, this would be the one that I would advise you to get. The second plane I would buy would be a low angle jack. Now they come two. They come,
Low angle block.
what'd I say?
Yeah.
Sorry. Low angle block.
Never get a low angle.
I hate low angle jacks. You can get a standard angle block or a low angle block. I'm suggesting you get the low angle because the height between here and here is less, so that nestles in your palm much more comfortably than to have it up here where a standard angle is. The difference? Well, the blade sits on a 12 degree ramp as opposed to a 20 degree ramp. Makes a huge difference, so much more comfortable. So that would be my number 2 purchase. My number 3 purchase, although it doesn't get used nearly as much, would be a shoulder plane. Why? Because the blade, Jake, are you here?
I'm here now.
The blade goes from edge to edge. I was using it tonight. We're just getting ready to do a YouTube video on how we install this special tail vise hardware and a bench. So I had to cut a slot in the middle of the board like that without going over and setting up the dado. So I did it using the shoulder plane because the blade goes corner to corner. Can't do that with any other plane. So whether you're trimming shoulder on a tenon or anytime you need to be able to cut right into a vertical surface, you need to have a blade that has that capacity. So that would be that choice. And number 4 would be a jointer. Long sole, references off of the high points and helps you bring it down to one level. Much easier to flatten a bench top with this plane than with any of the others, including the small smoother. Okay? Now we're going to give away $500. We're going to give away one now, and we'll give away one at the end, which is in 10 minutes. Frick, have you got that ready and rolled up?
Yep. And the $500 winner is
$500 is going to
Margaret Paul in Maine.
Oh, Margaret in Maine. Where in Maine, does it say?
No.
So we're in New Brunswick. So we're about an hour's drive from Calais, Maine. In fact, tomorrow morning, Jake is heading out to Bangor, Maine to pick up the group of vets. So congratulations. We'll give one more $500 one away. How many people we have on, Frick?
We have 653.
That's getting up there.
It's been our highest for a long time.
Okay. Question.
This one comes from Alfred Borg.
Alfred?
Yep. He says, Rob, can you explain the difference between joinery crosscut and bench crosscut? Thanks.
Yeah. Here's my bench crosscut. Here's my joinery crosscut. So this one is a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to wield. Now there's actually a third one. This is my 3/4 crosscut. So this is a saw. These two are the saws that you use in joinery, meaning you're doing fine cuts, and hopefully you're actually doing something where it's the last thing you're going to do, meaning you don't have to come in after the fact and use a chisel or a plane to correct your work. So if I was cutting a tenon, and I would have my marking gauge line across here like so. Now I don't have to make a very deep cut, but I would choose either of the last two so I could come in here, set that up just perfectly, and come in and make that cut. Don't need to cut my screwdriver in half. Precise enough that when I remove this piece, I could join to that. Same could be done with one like this. It's your preference, what you prefer in terms of size. Nice fine cut. That's a thinner one. This is a 24 thou. This is a 19 thou. Now, if I was coming in and I needed to cut the end of this board off, and either I didn't use power tools or I didn't want to have to go over and use power tools, maybe I just want a nice quiet afternoon, then I could use my bench crosscut. And instead of using my joinery crosscut on something that's somewhat of a rough cut, I would come in and use this. Faster cut. I'm cutting it down to size, and then I would go in and finish it with a on the shooting board in my plane. So you've got greater depth of cut. It's a longer saw. It's a little heavier tooth. It's 13 TPI versus 15 TPI versus 22 TPI. So each one's, this is going to cut a little bit slower than this. Is going to cut a little bit, pardon me. This is going to be cut a little bit slower than this. This is cut a little bit slower than this. The same amount of set on all of them, so it's still going to give you a really nice cut. But this, just because of its size, is going to allow you to come in and be a lot more precise. I say that. If you've got a lot of experience in this, you could probably do any of the jobs with this. But if you're at a position in your career, your woodworking career, where you need the advantage of the equipment, then that's when you can spend some money and buy a tool that will do the job a little bit easier because it has built in what you're lacking, which is experience. That make sense? Next question, Frick.
Chris Olson in the chat.
Hi, Chris.
He says, are there specific woods you'd recommend for the fence of a shooting board or something like a minimum Janka hardness?
Fence on a shooting board. Well, your shooting board takes a fair bit of abuse. I mean, that gets slammed quite a bit, not intentionally, but just in the process of working it. So what we use, I love going over and talking Janka. We should sell these, Jake, because everybody would love one. Can we know where to get them? So here's our scale. So you don't want to spend a fortune on something like that, but you do want something that's going to do the job well, meaning it needs to be nice and hard. So what we found, and we get it from Mel at Exotic Hardwoods in Burlington, Ontario, which I would suggest if you're looking for an incredible supplier of everything wood, get a hold of Mel. So we use Osage Orange. So I know, but if you look at Osage Orange in North America, our hardest wood, native wood, is 3,260. Now, just to give you an example, northern white pine, or that I love to use, comes down in here at 380. And then if you jump up here to maple, hard maple is 1,450. So if you go over here to the stuff that we're using, Osage Orange, which I just had a second ago, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Up, top row, where?
What time are you going to walk by it?
Right there, 2,620, so quite a bit harder than maple. Now we use plantation grown stuff, which, where is it, where did you find it on here?
Right there, your finger was just on it.
Where? Put your finger on it, there it is. And what's that come out at?
2380.
2380, so it's almost the same. Relatively inexpensive, hard. I was trying to plane it to do, to make something tonight, and the plane almost, it just skips over it, so you have to have your blade super sharp. But you want something really hard, get a piece of Osage Orange. I would say maple would certainly work, but it's going to get beat up a lot quicker than Osage Orange is. And as I said, relatively inexpensive. Keep going, we got lots of time. Good question.
Dan McFarland from Columbia.
Hey, Dan.
He says, hi, Rob. What do you think of the 50 and 55 degree angle frogs that Lee Nielsen offers? Would there be a major benefit of upgrading a plane to a higher degree frog?
So it's called a York pitch. Standard blade is held at 45 degrees. As you increase the pitch, you increase the performance, meaning it's going to cut figured wood better and it's not going to tear. But the resistance on pushing the plane really increases rapidly. It's a hard push. And the higher you go, the harder it is to do. Lee Nielsen sells 2 different frogs, so you can swap out, you can take the frog completely out of your plane and put in another frog. The other option is what we do, which you can get yourself a high angle blade or make a high angle blade. Do we sell them, Jake? Huh? See if I can find one here. I usually have one in my tool tray, but I swapped out my tool tray for this Well, let me just use this as an example then. So we normally put a back bevel on the plane, and it's done with a steel rule. It's less than 1 degree. But you can go in there and you can put a back bevel. We usually make ours about 1 millimeter wide. You put a little back bevel right on here, and that is about, we use a 20-degree back bevel. So now when you're planing, your blade, beveled down, is sitting like this. To calculate the angle of attack, if you change your frog, what you're doing is you're going from 45 to 55, 50 or 55. Yeah, I know, but it's so small I can hardly even see it. So what you're doing is you're changing this angle. You can leave the frog alone, change the angle on the back of the blade, and you're doing the same thing. Because there's a 20-degree bevel right here, you're increasing the pitch by 20 degrees. So now instead of 45 degrees, you're planing at 65 degrees. And you can do it whatever angle you want. It's a nice thing about that is we just put a chip breaker on it, and we just leave it. So if you need it, you just take out the chip, take out the lever cap, switch the blades, and away you go. Either or. I would recommend that if you're serious about working exotic woods in particular, that you definitely go the route of getting something that will increase the pitch. But bear in mind, it's a lot harder to push. Even with a sharp blade, it is a lot harder to push. You'll get tired quick. Next one, Frick. One more before we do our final draw.
Yeah, it should be a quick one. Jim in Atlanta, Georgia.
Hey, Jim.
Says for a scrub plane, would you convert an old Stanley number 4, 4.5, 5, or 5.5?
Probably a 4. A scrub plane gets thrown around almost like an axe, not like a regular plane. So I would convert a 4. I want to say hello to Angie. In case you guys don't know, Angie is right here. Angie does all the packaging of our Purple Heart t-shirts, which you guys need to start getting, because this is how we spread the word. Had a couple conversations today with people about this. That is Angie. She's Ken's cousin, and she and her sister Lynn help us. They do the packaging of our t-shirts, do a wonderful job. She puts her little symbol on there. Hi, Ange. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, any more vets? Chris? Who's Kyle? Is he a Newfoundlander? Kyle just bought himself a saw stop today. Got a super deal on it. Way to go, Kyle. All the way up there in Newfoundland. You don't get a used saw stop very often, but he did. Great saw. Kyle was one of our first 2 Canadians. He and Jesse Rufiange. Jesse, I need to shout out to Jesse as well. Jesse's over across the bay in Nova Scotia. Excellent craftsman. Jesse makes a lot of the stuff that we sell. And he just sent us a bunch of stuff to give away too. And in fact, down in Florida.
Oh yeah. What's his name?
You want to grab it and get it?
Yeah.
So we've had vets that have been sending us stuff to give away as prizes, which we really appreciate. And I want to show it to you. Dave Demir, yeah. Dave is retired EOD as well. So that we are in deep with the EOD community, thanks to guys like Jeff O'Connor, and Jeff's the first one that comes to mind as far as recommending other wounded vets to us. But Dave did a really nice cutting board. I'm going to show it to you. We're going to give it away as a prize, and maybe on Thursday night. Is that who did you mention? Oh, you mentioned Kyle. Yeah, Kyle was our assistant here just recently. Jake's bringing that in. Frick's ramping up to do our last $500 draw.
I'm ready.
Big thank you to Santa Claus and to Paul in Ontario for helping us with this. So here. What do we call this? I know what I could have used it 4 years ago. A performance review. This is a nice little cutting board. This is Jesse Rufiange that made this one. Jesse sent us a whole bunch. We'll show it to you. We'll give a bunch of this stuff away on Thursday night. I didn't even mention the why we do this, but there's a really nice. This is a moose size
cutting board. It has the Purple Heart Project laser engraved on the bottom, made out of black walnut. Got really nice rubber feet. It's got a food safe finish on it, and it's got what's called a juice groove that goes all the way around, and a beautiful piece of work. Thank you, Dave, for sending that up. Now, if you, I haven't even mentioned this, and I should have. The reason we do this is to help raise funds for running our Purple Heart Project. So 6 times a year, we bring in 7 combat wounded vets from all over the world. As you heard, our last class, we had Tony up from Australia. Last year, we had a vet come from Ireland. We had one come from Denmark. Most of our wounded vets come from the US. We get a good number from Canada. We could always do more. And it costs a lot of money. So if you want to support us, we are now a registered 501c3 in the United States. And we're working on the same status for Canada. So thank you for your support. All right, Frick, let's give away the last $500 prize.
All right.
Who's it going to?
It is going to...
Who's feeling lucky? Well, can you hold 1 second?
Nope, I already got it.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark Merrill in Idaho.
Hey, Mark, all the prizes went to the U.S. I just want to show you something real quick because I happen to have it here. So here's the difference between a standard angle. Jake, can you hone in on this? A standard angle and a low angle block plane. I was telling you how much more comfortable one is than the other. Here, I can just squeeze them like this and bring them over, I think. You see how much higher the one on the back is? So it's not nearly as comfortable to hold on to. That's why you want to get the low angle. Much nicer, much more comfortable. All right, so we're going to finish this on Thursday night. Big shout out to Ken, too. I think Ken's on. He's away at his camp for the weekend. Ken Anthony manages our shop. Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. We'll be halfway through our class. We get a chance to walk around and say hello to all the guys in there, vets and civilians alike. Let you kind of peek in and be a part of it. And we love having you just as much as you love seeing that. So have a good week. We'll see you on Thursday night. Thank you for your generosity. And take care. See you.